The cameras flashed. The 18-wheelers were unloaded under the cover of darkness. And just like that, the most famous arena in the world transformed into a secret garden for the most anticipated edos of the century. Hollywood and the world had a new obsession. Taylor Swift's emotional wedding vows have finally been revealed. Welcome to StarScope Report. Join us as we uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, today we take a deep dive into the stories behind the fame.
And, the mission for today's deep dive goes, well, far beyond just a typical celebrity recap. We are taking the heavily guarded on-the-ground reports from this July 3rd, 2026 wedding event, and we're cross-referencing them with a brand new psychological study on parasocial relationships.
Which is such a fascinating angle.
Right. The goal here is to decode the mechanics of this cultural phenomenon. We want to understand not just what happened inside that arena, but the underlying psychological reasons why this specific pop culture moment exerts such a massive gravitational pull on our collective psyche.
I mean, we have the exact details of what made Travis Kelce break down at the altar. But later in the deep dive, we'll talk about the shocking psychological twist nobody saw coming regarding how this wedding is actually affecting your brain.
It's definitely a twist.
Yeah. So let's start with the sheer audacity of the venue, Madison Square Garden. Because you hear celebrity wedding and you assume, like, a secluded Italian villa, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe a private island in the Caribbean.
Somewhere far away from the public eye.
Exactly. But planting this right in the chaotic, pulsing center of New York City, that is a massive logistical flex.
Oh, it's an unprecedented level of environmental control.
Yeah.
I mean, just the exterior logistics required militaristic precision.
Yeah.
You have law enforcement sources confirming 135 NYPD officers assigned strictly to the perimeter.
Wow, 135.
Yeah. They established private barricades, shut down major pedestrian thoroughfares, and orchestrated this covert parade of 18-wheelers delivering supplies in total secrecy. They effectively built a fortress in the middle of Manhattan.
And what's fascinating to me is how the city itself was almost co-opted as a guest, or maybe as a prop. The Empire State Building deliberately lit up in something blue, and the massive jumbotron outside MSG flashed Justin T. married.
Which is impossible to miss.
Right. It was this towering, inescapable public spectacle. But the physical transition for the actual guests, about 1,000 A-listers, including, Selena Gomez, Bradley Cooper, Gigi Hadid, Paul McCartney, that transition was designed to actively strip away that chaotic public energy.
That transition is critical from an architectural and psychological standpoint. When those guests stepped out of their black SUVs, they didn't just walk through standard stadium turnstiles. They were channeled through this sprawling, photo-lined tunnel.
Yeah, and this wasn't just a hallway. It was a curated timeline of Taylor and Travis's lives. It featured childhood photos and milestones from their relationship. And from a purely behavioral design perspective, that tunnel acts as a physical and mental palate cleanser.
Oh, absolutely.
It forces the guests to leave the sensory overload of New York City behind and reorient their brains around the core narrative. Like, you are no longer in a 20,000-seat concrete sports arena. You are entering a family's private history.
You hit the nail on the head regarding sensory control there. Inside the arena, the environmental design was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. They brought in towering, living ferns and actual trees to create this dense, forest-themed decor. The secret garden.
Literally building a forest inside MSG.
Exactly. But they didn't stop at the visuals. The floors were covered in thick, soft peach carpets, surrounded by sweeping drapes, with a completely white guest seating area.
Which isn't just about looking pretty, right? That has to serve a functional purpose in a space that massive. How do you make an event with 1,000 A-listers actually feel deeply personal?
Well, it's all about the acoustics. Madison Square Garden is a concrete echo chamber. It's designed to amplify the screams of 20,000 sports fans. So to make it feel intimate for 1,000 people, you have to completely alter the sound.
Oh, so the carpets absorb the noise.
Right. Those thick peach carpets and heavy drapes absorb the sound, deadening the ambient noise so that conversations actually feel close and private. Furthermore, the color psychology is highly intentional.
Oh, so?
Peach evokes warmth, safety, and physical comfort, and the bright white seating area forces the eye to focus inward on the ceremony itself rather than drifting up to that cavernous ceiling. They essentially tricked the human nervous system into feeling enclosed and secure inside a massive stadium.
That is brilliant. It's like they took the spectacle of the Super Bowl and somehow managed to turn it into a private, emotional garden party.
That's a great way to put it.
And speaking of visuals that demand focus, let's look at the fashion. Both Taylor and Travis wore custom Christian Dior haute couture. And this is significant because Jonathan Anderson designed it. This was his very first couture dress for a celebrity.
A huge moment for him.
Huge. And she paired it with Christian Louboutin shoes and Cartier jewelry. It's the ultimate display of elevated billionaire elegance. But here is where the narrative gets, well, seemingly contradictory. They spend millions on custom Dior and MSG logistics, but then they completely ditch the traditional massive bridal party.
Yeah, that was a striking choice.
The only people standing up there with them were her brother, Austin Swift, as the man of honor, and his brother, Jason Kelce, as the best man. No traditional bridesmaids or groomsmen at all.
It's not a contradiction so much as it is a highly calculated balancing act. This is narrative control at its finest. If you have a $100 million wedding in Madison Square Garden with 20 bridesmaids in matching designer gowns, it crosses the line.
Right, it becomes a gala.
Exactly. It goes from a wedding to an impersonal corporate gala. By stripping the bridal party down to just their respective brothers, they anchor the exorbitant luxury in a grounded, working-class family narrative. It sends a subconscious message to the guests and the public. Yes, we are global icons wearing custom Dior, but at our core, this is just two tight-knit families coming together.
It's the billionaire equivalent of a backyard wedding. That is such a smart PR move, whether it was intentional or just genuinely how they felt. But if you think the spatial psychology in the Dior are fascinating, wait till you hear what was actually written inside the gold-bound books at the altar. If you're loving these exclusive Hollywood details, make sure you're subscribed. We've got even crazier stories ahead.
So this ceremony is precisely where all that environmental manipulation really paid off. Because the space felt intimate, the emotional weight of the day was able to land with incredible force, and it began by subverting traditional gender expectations.
Completely. The major headline leaking out of the ceremony is that Travis Kelce cried significantly more than Taylor Swift, which honestly is the exact vulnerability people love about their dynamic. And they didn't just say a few quick I do's.
No, not at all.
Each of them read vows for about 20 minutes. 20 minutes.
A 20-minute vow is no longer just a promise. It is an endurance performance of intimacy. And they read these from matching gold-bound books, which, elevates the spoken word into a physical, historical artifact.
And Taylor, of course, actually sang portions of her vows to him. I want to dive into the specific contents we know about, because the mechanics of what they chose to highlight are so revealing. Travis told Taylor, "I will protect you for the rest of my life," which brought her to tears.
Very traditional protective sentiment.
Yeah. But Taylor's vows had something really specific. She didn't talk about his Super Bowl rings or his global fame. She shared a story from Travis's high school days. She talked about how, even when he was the star athlete, he would intentionally go out of his way to sit with the less popular kids who were being bullied at lunch. She called it proof of the man he has always been.
From a sociological perspective, that specific anecdote is a phenomenally powerful grounding tool. When a relationship has been as heavily scrutinized, commodified, and, consumed by the media as theirs, there is a serious risk of losing the human beings beneath the avatars.
That makes sense. They become characters.
Exactly. By spotlighting a story from high school, before the fame, before the money, it strips away the celebrity facade. It forces everyone in that room to view this towering NFL player not as a brand, but through the lens of fundamental adolescent kindness. It reclaims their humanity.
It recenters the narrative on character rather than status. And they maintain that grounded feeling with their officiant. They had comedian Adam Sandler officiate, which is the ultimate tension breaker.
It really is.
Right. After 40 minutes of intense, tear-jerking vows, Sandler steps up and offers this incredibly simple, folksy advice. He just said, keep kissing every day, every minute that you have an opportunity.
It acts as an emotional release valve. You bring the audience to the brink of overwhelming sentimentality, and then you use a beloved comedian to safely bring them back down to earth with practical levity.
They definitely knew they were taking the guests on an emotional roller coaster. Maren Morris actually revealed that guests were given custom-made, personalized embroidered handkerchief beforehand. And the party favors featured the lyric from Blank Space, so it's going to be forever.
A brilliant self-aware wink to her own mythology.
Totally. But the reception is where we see the absolute peak of what I'm going to call high-low branding.
The catering choices were certainly a departure from a standard society wedding.
That is an understatement. There was no formal, seated dinner. Instead, Inside Madison Square Garden, they set up a lavish array of food trucks and stations featuring their favorite New York City spots.
Just parked right inside.
Yeah. You had guests in Dior and Louboutin eating Mama's 2 Pizza, Danny and Coop's Philly cheesesteaks, and sushi. But the detail that absolutely kills me, the ultimate symbol of this wedding, they served caviar on chicken nuggets.
That single appetizer perfectly encapsulates their dual public personas.
Exactly. It's a PR masterclass. It tells the public, hey, we are relatable, we eat chicken nuggets and Philly cheesesteaks just like you do on a Sunday watching football. But it also firmly reminds you we are billionaires, so our nuggets are dusted with beluga caviar. It maintains their approachability without sacrificing their aspirational status.
It also encourages a specific type of mingling. By eliminating the assigned seated dinner, you force the 1,000 guests to move, to interact, to stand in line at a food truck. It democratizes the room, breaking down the social hierarchies that usually paralyze hyper-elite gatherings.
And the entertainment followed that same communal vibe. Paul McCartney got up and sang, "I Want to Hold Your Hand." Stevie Nicks performed. Interestingly, Taylor didn't perform at the wedding itself, though she did sing rock songs with Travis at the 100-guest rehearsal dinner the night before.
That's a nice boundary to set.
I love that choice. She entertains for a living. On her wedding day, she finally let herself be the audience. But all of this extreme relatability, the chicken nuggets, the bullied kid story, the brother as the best man, it's designed to make us feel like we are part of their inner circle, which perfectly bridges us to the hidden cost of this cultural obsession. We've all been obsessing over these details, but is this global fascination actually harmless? And that's not even the wildest part, because science says our obsession comes with a hidden cost.
Precisely. The intimacy of those vows and the calculated relatability of the reception are the exact mechanisms that trick our brains into forming deeply entrenched parasocial bonds. And that brings us to the psychological framework of why we care so much and what that caring actually does to us on a neurological level.
Let's get into the study.
Right. There is a brand new 2026 study published in the World Journal of Advanced Research and Reviews, conducted by researchers Doon Dave and Lokesh L. They studied 291 young adults, specifically between the ages of 18 and 25, to examine the impact of these one-sided emotional connections.
So we've touched on parasocial relationships before, but I think the best way to describe them is like emotional junk food. You have this intense, one-sided bond with a celebrity. You know about the peach carpets, you cry over the vows, and it completely satisfies your immediate craving for human connection. But because they don't know you exist, it provides zero actual relational nutrition. Over time, you end up emotionally malnourished.
That is an excellent analogy. The brain processes the dopamine hit of connection when you read about the wedding, but it entirely lacks the reciprocal feedback loop that real relationships require, and the study's findings reflect that exact malnutrition.
What did they find?
The researchers found a statistically significant negative correlation between these parasocial relationships and two critical psychological pillars, self-esteem and identity formation.
Meaning, the more I emotionally invest in Travis and Taylor's perfect romance, the worse I feel about my own life, and the less I understand who I actually am.
Exactly. The researchers point to the social compensation hypothesis to explain the first half of that equation. This theory posits that individuals who feel insecure, isolated, or unfulfilled in their real-world interpersonal lives will instinctively compensate by leaning heavily into mediated connections.
So if my own romantic life is a series of terrible dates and ghosting, my brain uses Taylor and Travis as an emotional crutch. It's safe. It's a guaranteed fairy tale where no one is going to reject me because I'm just watching it on a screen.
It is a defense mechanism against real-world vulnerability. But the safety of that emotional crutch is an illusion because it inevitably leads to the next psychological trap, which is upward social comparison.
Okay, what does that mean in this context?
When you constantly consume highly curated, idealized portrayals, a flawless secret garden, custom Dior, a partner who vows to protect you and cries for 20 minutes, you establish an impossible baseline for what love and life should look like, because you are constantly comparing your messy, unscripted reality upward against an unattainable, heavily produced standard. It constantly triggers feelings of inadequacy, systematically eroding your global self-worth.
Okay, I have to push back a little bit here because this sounds incredible bleak. Isn't it just human nature to seek out myths and fairy tales? I mean, we've been doing it since the ancient Greeks. Are we really eroding our own identities and self-worth just by swooning over Travis Kelce protecting bullied kids? Or is more like finding a modern role model?
It's a fair question.
Like, don't these highly visible people just serve as symbolic role models for the values we want to cultivate in our own lives?
It is a vital distinction, and the study doesn't dismiss the value of inspiration at all. Media figures certainly serve as symbolic role models for cultural values like kindness or loyalty. The psychological danger doesn't lie in feeling inspired by them. The danger is rooted in the mechanics of what psychologists call identity process theory, particularly for that 18 to 25 demographic.
Walk me through the actual mechanism of that. How does looking at a celebrity wedding stall my identity?
True, stable identity isn't something you just absorb by watching someone else. It is consolidated through friction. It requires active exploration. You have to go out to the real world, make mistakes, commit to roles, experience rejection, have awkward conversations, and navigate conflict. That friction is how the brain maps out who you are and what you stand for.
Oh, wow. So if I'm spending hours every day obsessing over the unattainable perfection of a billionaire's customized Dior wedding, I'm removing the friction.
Exactly. You are substituting active identity exploration for passive consumption. When young adults invest their finite emotional energy into these hyper-curated parasocial milestones, they are avoiding the messy, necessary work of building their own lives. They experience life vicariously, which leads to identity foreclosure, a state where they adopt values and expectations without ever truly testing them in reality. The fantasy becomes a paralyzing substitute for reality rather than an inspiration for it.
That is heavy. We are literally outsourcing our emotional development to celebrities because their milestones look so much prettier and so much safer on a screen. Our brains are terrified of the real-world friction, so we just eat the emotional junk food instead. If you're finding yourself nodding along to this, stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next deep dive into the psychology behind pop culture.
It truly underscores the urgent need for media literacy. There is nothing wrong with enjoying the spectacle of the Madison Square Garden wedding. I mean, the caviar on chicken nuggets is phenomenal branding, but we must constantly remind our brains that we are consuming a highly sanitized highlight reel.
Even the crying.
Yes, even the seemingly raw vulnerabilities. The tears, the trembling voices at the altar are filtered to us through a lens of immense privilege, security, and narrative production.
It's the difference between watching a beautifully shot cinematic movie and trying to literally live inside the screen. You can appreciate the breathtaking cinematography, the lighting, the script, without feeling a crushing sense of inadequacy that your own living room doesn't have a professional lighting crew and a booming soundtrack. The movie isn't real life, and neither is the celebrity wedding, no matter how many childhood photos they put in the entry tunnel.
Which brings us to an essential question to leave you with today. If our parasocial bonds and our social comparisons are largely driven by these flawlessly curated highlight reels online, what happens when a global power couple goes out of their way to hide their flaws entirely? Does consuming the narrative of a perfect secret garden wedding make the eventual, inevitable reality of a public marriage, with all its real-world friction, arguments, and missteps, harder for the fans to process than for the couple themselves?
You've been listening to StarScope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.